And he asked me, so what are you up to in life? Because you seem to be, doing some really good work. What are you up to in life? And I said, oh, enjoying it. What do you mean? Well, I just want to enjoy my life. And I could hear the kind of the cogs turning in his mind, and it was just like, wow, that's really nice. And then he said, but what do you do in your professional life? And I said, well, I help others enjoy theirs. And he went, wow, that is simple. And then he said, so wait, how does that, I think I know the answer, he said, but how does that help people in business, at work, and in other things, and in other, pursuits that we have in this world of form that we have in our human bodies? And I said, well, anytime someone's enjoying life, they do everything better. And he went, again, that is that simple. So my wish for everyone is to find a way for their minds to remain soothed and back to being settled and relaxed in a way that life becomes more and more enjoyable. And that's done without even trying, and without a self-centered ego having anything to do with it. Because life, I can't imagine how much enjoyment I have in it today.
Welcome to the Soothing the Unsettled Mind community. We are going to explore how you can relax your mind so that you can have a more vibrant, exciting, fun, and easeful experience of life. And I think that is right up the alley of my guest right now. His name is Wyn Morgan. I've been in a couple of courses of his. He is probably as cool as a cucumber. I have a lot of people tell me that I'm the most calm people that they've met. Wyn is probably the most calm person that I've met, so that's definitely saying something. He's been in the Three Principles community for a long time, and he helps coaches and businesses to relax and make things even simpler so that they can achieve the results that they want in life and in business.
Well,
Welcome.
it's good to be here, Rich. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
It's my pleasure. I had to have you back. After I was listening to the episode that we did together, you had said something that I was like, oh my gosh, I messed up completely. I should have asked him about this. Because it was a rabbit trail, but I could tell that there was something really cool at the end of it. And so I'd like to have a conversation about that. The theme of today's conversation is get stuff done with relaxed focus. And so while I was listening to our conversation, you said that there is a difference between pressure and focus. And that just lit something up in me. I said, if people really understood that, if they understood the difference between pressure and focus, it would really change the way that they worked. It would change their lives. It would change the way that they approached pretty much everything. And so I felt like I owed it to myself and the world at large to have another conversation with you, man.
Cool. I remember you messaging me that the next day saying, I'd love to talk more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's something I think I've known for a while, the distinction between pressure and focus. And I want to look at it afresh right now with you and all of you to see what makes sense right now. And because I know that there's a lot of people who think that pressure is a good thing in order to do something well. Pressure's good, it provides impetus and all that kind of stuff. And I've known that to be just not true. I've known for a really long time that wasn't true. I remember in exams in school, way back when, that I couldn't do as well when I felt the pressure. But I also noticed that even in the very first year of exams, I'm going way back to the early 80s, right? And exams are a big deal. And I'm going, I don't know, it's just a little test and I've got a pretty good memory. I'll just, I'll do my revising, my studying, and then I'll do what I can in the exam. And I remember I enjoyed the exams. And I did really well, surprisingly well, surprising to me and surprising to the teachers, in fact, that I exceeded expectations at the end of your exams. And I think one reason was because the enjoyment factor was there without so much of the pressure. But here's where it looks like, and when I'm talking to people for the first time in businesses, they think that, well, if I didn't have pressure, I wouldn't do anything. But they forget this other variable that you brought up and that you wanted to explore together today, the whole notion of focus. Because if you think of, to me anyway, and I'm going to make a distinction as to what focus is. Focus is having a mind on one thing. Mind's on one thing. Pressure, to me, is not having our mind in one thing. Pressure is the feeling I've got lots of things going on weighing me down. What you said, was it soothing the what mind did you say it's
The
called?
unsettled mind.
The unsettled mind. Pressure is unsettled. It's unsettled. It's kind of being, when you think of, um, well, I'm going back now, right? Way back again, back to school days. In geography, we learned about the geology of rocks, and that there are rocks called, I think, sedimentary rocks that are formed because of pressure. Well, that's not soothing, to a pressure. I mean, one way that um, old plants, trees, under pressure over millions of years become coal, and under more pressure, which is, and coal being a very refined version of carbon under pressure, is the whole, um, oh, met, metaphoric? Metamorphosis, right? That when something changes its nature, but sedentary is limestone. Limestone is sedentary, right? Because that's under pressure. But under extreme pressure, which is metamorphic, if I remember, Katrina, thanks for correcting me. Um, Trees become coal, and then coal under even more pressure and time can become diamonds, which is another really uh, pure form of carbon. Now, it's great for making gems and making coal that we can then burn, even though clearly we've figured out that that's not such a good idea en masse. Yeah, rock spotting geek. Oh, actually, one of those things that I am pretty good at is remembering things that a trivia buff would. Um, but back to the whole notion of the mind. The mind is not good when it's under pressure. It's not good when there's more things on it. It's not good when it's being crushed. And we know that. And focus is the ability with and I'm going to say this, a relaxed mind, a soothed mind, with one thing on it. But here's where I'm going to kind of be a bit contrary with myself on this one and just open this up to the people's point of view. And Katrina, thanks for the prompts in the chat. And hi, Windsor. I hope your journey back from Glastonbury is going all right. Um, I use a birdsong identifier app in the garden, right? And what this does, it's fantastic on my iPad. And it's developed by people in one of the Ivy League schools in New England, in your part of the world, Rich, in the US. And it is phenomenal at being able to identify the the frequency and the volume of birdsong and then attribute that to a specific local species of birds. It's fantastic at that, right? It's what I've learned about birds since I downloaded that app in the last 3 years is phenomenal. But it's not great at hearing everything. So, example, if I hear in the distance a bird and I know what that bird is, my knowledge will be able to distinguish that better than this Merlin app would be able to do. If I focus in on one thing, such as, okay, that is a specific type of crow that I can hear in the distance. Meanwhile, on the Merlin app, it's shown up three other species of birds that it can hear but doesn't filter out. But because I've got a single focus on this one thing, this specific type of crow, I will not have bandwidth for everything else. So there's a part of me that then suggests, well, to what extent is focus there for a good thing? And I think there's a way that focus, if we've just got, again, if we're focusing on too much, especially if I'm listening to one type of bird, I'm missing out on so many things. So I'm making a case now that pressure is absolutely not a healthy place to come from. I'm also suggesting that a single-minded focus might not be either. But what I do know, focus is better than pressure, and I know that a relaxed mind is better than both. That's how it looks to me today. Now, don't quote me on that for life, but right now that's how it looks to me today. So if I was in a room with a group of salespeople, or if I was in a room with a bunch of CEOs who want to grow their business, or a lot of people who want to have a happier, more contented life, I would talk more about having a relaxed mind brings us access to a deeper, because I know this for myself, but I had to see it for myself first, a deeper access to something that my intellect can never grasp, and something far more powerful than my stored memory of trivia about rocks from when I probably learned that about 40 odd years ago, maybe 45 years ago almost now. There's something in us, and it's not a Wyn thing. It looks to me like it's something that is inherent, innate in us as humans, that when our minds are relaxed, we have access to something, to fresh ideas and things that tend to just land better. So, can I give a quick example, Rich?
Please, yeah.
Before, so, I was talking. I had two potential new clients on Friday before I then did a full day with somebody on Zoom who was based in the Pacific Northwest of the US. And both of these people, who are kind of quite senior in their organizations, they wanted more help with what to do with their high-end clients, customers, what to do with them in order to help their individual contributions grow. In other words, how do I get more money from these clients? Now they know that it's not just one way. I will just like take more from them. They know it's a value exchange. They know that the better they do by their clients and customers, the better that will work out for them and their business. But it was really interesting that they both came with ideas that they wanted a template of the questions to ask somebody, a decision maker in one of their clients or customers, depending on what they call them. One calls them customer success, one called them client excellence, I think. They were both looking for specific tips on real questions to ask. And I know that what's more powerful is that any human whose mind is relaxed and curious, which is and curious happens in a relaxed mind, when they're having a conversation with somebody, such as a senior person in one of their important big state clients and customers, if they're coming from a state of a relaxed mind with curiosity, great questions will come. And they'll have a genuine interest as opposed to a quiz document to actually ask somebody. And one of the people, this guy was in Switzerland, the client excellence manager, he was saying, well, I use a lot of work with AI, but I know that the initial discovery conversation with the senior people in my client base, that is a very human interaction. And then I take my learnings, I put it into the AI agents that we have. And then they throw out suggestions. And then me, human, and my team, human, we go in and refine and see which ones would actually be the best course of action that we're going to recommend that client. And then we use AI again in order to make the presentation as compelling as possible. Now, I know that AI can be really helpful for some things, and for some things, I don't think it really is. So connecting with a client, being curious, and having ideas that no one's ever thought of before, said in a way that's heartfelt, I know a machine cannot do that, regardless of so far how much a machine can learn. Because one thing we do have going for us is the ability to be heartfelt. A machine, as far as I'm aware, does not have a heart and therefore cannot feel it, cannot come across as heartfelt. But real-time intelligence, I believe, well, I know really can, because I've seen it firsthand in myself. And I've seen it firsthand in hundreds, if not many thousands of people over the last 15 odd years since I was first introduced to what we call the three principles, as discovered by Sydney Banks. So that's my sort of start, Rich, with a quick story and an example.
There was a lot there, I felt like. Because you mentioned that pressure is not a good idea, and that was really kind of our last conversation. Pressure is not a good idea. So you brought that up. If you are still unsure about that, go listen to that previous conversation, because we're coming from a new starting place. And what you're saying is that focus is better than pressure. Seems like it. And that there's something that might be even better than that, or maybe a combination of the two, which you brought up a relaxed mind. Maybe that combined with focused intention could create something really, really cool. And you also said that it's a lot easier than you think. It's not something that you have to really try and bear down on. It's not something that can come from a computer. It's going to come from you. One of the things that I really like and will often do with clients is I will suggest that they read a chapter in a certain book, The Relationship Handbook by George Pransky. You're very familiar with George. And it's the chapter on commitment. Because George has a different definition of commitment that I think is really valuable. He says that commitment is just a dismissing of distracting thoughts. And the other thing that he proposes in that chapter, which you can see for yourself if this is true, is that enjoyment comes when we are committed to something, not after we're committed to something. So it's basically, a lot of people think, well, I'm going to enjoy the thing, and therefore I will be committed to it. That's the order of events. But it's actually the other way around. If you are committed to it, that brings a sense of enjoyment because you're all into whatever you're doing. And that's really, really cool. That's what maybe this relaxed focus that we're talking about is. Yeah, it's really enjoyable. It's really fun. And it's also because we've kind of weeded through some of these distracting thoughts, some of the pressure that we've put on ourselves, maybe some of the things that the AI has said that we think we need to go with. I'm really curious. So, if you were to say what is the difference between focus and a relaxed mind, like what would you say about each of those?
Well, if I was to borrow that definition that George Pransky wrote about in the Relationship Handbook, that commitment is the absence of, or the was it the absence of of distracting thoughts? I don't know the word was absent.
It was dismissing. It was, yeah.
Dismissing. Yeah. Now, if focus can be described or defined as the absence of distracting thought, then I would say focus would be the same as having a relaxed mind. I would say that they would go hand in hand. So here's an example. Um, and while it's very hot and sunny here in the UK today at the time of recording, and our friends here in the UK would testify to that. I went for a walk around 12:30 until 2 o'clock, right? The heat, peak of the heat of the day, and the sun at its highest, which given my complexion, isn't always a wise thing. But I did take a few precautions about making sure I wouldn't burn too much because I really wanted to go for a walk, and the reason I wanted to go for a walk was as well as it's just really nice to be out. I wanted to listen. I had three client mentees to listen to. So recordings of them with their clients that they share with me in order to help them become more impactful as coaches, which is something that the gentleman that you just mentioned, George Pransky, Rich, he was a master at that with me when we first started working together about 10 years ago. That it would take him maybe 10 minutes of listening to a call that I had with one of my clients, and he would just like, okay, you do this. And I went, do I? And then we would talk about it, and it would be, okay, that's paid for a whole year's worth of mentoring, like that 1 15-minute conversation that he and I would have. So the reason I did so well, the reason I feel qualified to be able to do that with coaches these days is because of how many times I did it with George, that it helped me see through a mentor's eyes as to what's going on in that kind of conversation. So anyway, today I'm out for a walk and I've put my earbuds in and I've got Dropbox on my phone and I go for a walk and I'm listening to these three recordings. And it's something I really enjoy to do. I really love doing it. But I noticed that in each of the three, the coach is being distracted by external stuff that is going on in the world of their client. And they're talking about things that are effectively not where the good stuff's at. It's not where the impact's at. It's helping, in fact, it's helping their client get more of a busy mind and distracted into things that don't make the difference. And and while I guess that's natural and normal, it's a function of what makes sense for them to get into in real time in the moment. It would be lovely if, in my opinion, they weren't distracted by anything other than the one thing that would change that client's life forever. Because that's what I'm always on the lookout for. Okay. In my listening, not that I'm on purposely doing this. So I'm not like, let me just focus on one thing because I know what will happen going back to that Merlin app example that I talked about. I wouldn't hear all the nuances. I'd be too focused. But I'd still be focused on, and it would focusing in on, I wonder what one thing, if they understood it, would change their life forever. And it occurs to me from a relaxed mind, but with focus. Always. Oh, if they understood this, this would change their life. Now, it might not be in that one specific call, but it might dawn on me the next morning when I'm brushing my teeth, where it's just like, oh, wow, it will come out of the blue. And the fact that it can come out of the blue, to me, is a clue, because I think we can all relate to that, right? When our minds are quiet, when we're not doing anything, we get ideas that go, wait a minute, that would be kind of cool. Because our minds are relaxed and we can hear these fresh ideas that seem to come from nowhere, certainly not from our intellect nor memory. It just occurs to us. And to me, that's something that goes back to this notion of having a relaxed mind. Um, I said it to somebody earlier today. I suspect that's the only thing I ever need to have any attention on. To what extent is my mind relaxed? My intellect hates that idea because it wants to go in the opposite direction. It really wants to think, even as I say it now, I notice ego, intellect really want to disagree with that because they want to be involved. They want to be important. And yet, a deeper part of me knows that a relaxed mind gives the best access to memory, the best access to intellect, the best access to the deepest part of me, at the shallowest part of me, the egoic part of me, always will crave for.
And it tries to figure out, well, I'm gonna do the relaxing. You know, it's like, what are the steps? What do I have to do? What are the techniques to relaxing my mind so that I can create this and do amazing things? And maybe I'll tell the story that I told it when we were first talking. I was telling Wyn a story about my wife, and at the beginning of the session, and she was having a hard time at work, so she was feeling really stressed, really upset, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be there for her. I'm gonna be a great supportive husband. I know this deep listening stuff. I'm gonna be the best thing ever. She's just gonna sing my praises. And it's gonna make her feel so much better. And it didn't go that way. As you can imagine. I was listening to her and really in it. And I'm like, I'm deep listening. I'm doing great. And she didn't feel heard or understood because I was so focused on deep listening, making sure I'm really paying attention. And she said, whatever you're doing, you need to stop. I don't want this right now. And she went to bed, and I felt like, oh man, I messed up. I'm not doing the deep listening thing right. I'm a failure of a coach, whatever my mind told me at that point. And then the next day, she tells the same story to my father-in-law. He comes over. And I'm not really listening. I'm kind of listening. I'm there, but I'm chiming in. I'm throwing out comments. And then afterwards, after she's done, she says, "Whatever you did was really great. That was really like your comments were really helpful and really validating, and I felt really heard and understood." And I'm like, this is bizarre because I wasn't trying, but that was the key. That was what made me a better listener than when I was doing all of the deep listening, amazing things that I can do. And it just reminded me to really make it even easier that when I approach clients, when I'm listening to anyone, I can listen with an even more relaxed mind, as you said. The other thing that I was curious that I'd love for you to speak to in is it seems like there's a way of focusing, because we use this word focus, right? There's lots of different kinds of focusing. But it seems like you're saying that there's a way of focusing that might be like a hyper focusing that's not very productive. Like you were talking about with those birds, where you're a little too zoomed in on one bird and you're not seeing the big picture. And you're saying that that's not the direction that you want to go in order to create some really cool things, in order to have that wisdom speak to you. The the thoughts that come out of the blue, have those speak to you. Could you tell us more about that?
Here's what comes to mind. Um, I know the feeling when I'm in that hyper focus that you're just mentioning, when I'm honing in on something. I think the phrase is myopic. It just single-eyed, single vision, and honing in on something so specific that the feeling tells me that if it feels heavy or it feels like there's um unsettled, going back to the word that you have for this, or it feels burdened, maybe that's the word for it. It feels like there's a burden, there's more going on. Then I know that that's not the feeling I want to follow. Now I'm going to go there as a human. I'm going to go there, but it's not one when I catch on to myself that I'm heading in that direction. It's not one I want to keep going in because the more I don't know. I think there can be such a thing as a relaxed focus, which is going back to the definition that we just made up, which is um, not not being caught up by distracting thoughts, not letting thoughts distract us. Maybe that's the simplest way of saying it. And in that state of mind, the feeling is just so easy and almost like there's well, here's how it looks and feels to me anyway. There's a different kind of like dimension of feeling that occurs there. It's almost like I wrote about it last week, and it's in this month's blog post of mine. No plug intended, because it is free. Um, there's more vibrancy. It's almost like air has a depth and a feel to it. Colors seem more vibrant, and it isn't always like this. I don't always feel the resonance in, the table I put my fingers on right now. But there's a feeling of connection that's there, a feeling of incredible gratitude that tends to follow straight away because I sometimes will marvel at the existence of photons, the existence of light itself, and how much I mean, I take that for granted. But it's not a given. Not a given that there would be light in the universe. Not a given that I could see. Not a given that I could breathe. Not a given that I could have as a healthy functioning human being right now, touch wood, that I'm able to take in the world and everything in it and outside of it when I look at the stars at night, and able to appreciate the fact that I'm conscious, a sapient being, that I'm able to have this experience and have these amazing things called emotions and feelings. So let's face it, going back to the whole story at the beginning of this when I geeked out on rocks, it's a tiny amount of time that we're alive for, in this form anyway. Not that I know what's before and after, but in this form of someone being called Wyn Morgan, who was born when I was born on that day in Carmarthen, Katrina, not that far away from you, and then spent the first 25 years of his life in Swansea. it's just, it's a very fleeting experience of being alive. And I spent a lot of the first 40, 43 years, 42, 43 years of that life not feeling grateful for it. But now I feel incredibly grateful to have been born. And I'm still the same guy. I have the same foibles. I have the same frailties. I'm the same idiot. You know, I have the same kind of things that annoy me. Maybe a little bit less than they used to, but still I can easily be annoyed, especially at myself. And that's what it is to be human, but to be able to embrace all of it, including me, sometimes being hoodwinked to feel pressure and putting pressure on myself, thinking that's a smart idea. You know, including being forgetting how grateful I am for this group of atoms to be animated into human form and then to be sentient and then to be able to have feelings and all of the other amazing sensations that a human being can have. You know, and having a conversation last night, I kid you not, with a squirrel. Because I just figured that the squirrel was hungry, and I said, "Are you hungry?" And it was like the little guy or the little girl understood me and came wandering over, and I had some bird seed that I was ready to feed my favorite robin in the garden because she's got a second brood of the spring, and she knows that I'm a friendly face and a friendly dude. But now this squirrel's kind of caught on to it. So the squirrel got a really good feed, and he was, I don't know, a few inches away from my knees yesterday. And I don't know. Here's what I mean. Moments like that to me are miraculous. And there's so much in life that's miraculous. And I never want to forget or take that for granted.
Hmm. There's something in there that I'm really sensing and feeling because it's something that I've come into contact with before. That relaxed feeling that you're talking about where you're just seeing a little bit more vibrancy. And I mean, that's why I created my business in the first place, Rich Life Realization. That's what that's all about is seeing that there's this energetic resonance. Like you were talking about how sometimes I'll think to myself that too, like how we aren't seeing anything. We're just seeing this, having an experience of a mental energy of light going through our eyeballs and then being interpreted by our brain. So literally we're seeing energy, and there's something so freaking magical and mystical to that that blows my mind and makes me so grateful and makes me just my heart swell with gratitude, like you talked about, with curiosity, with this exploratory feeling of, man, I'm here right now and I get to do this. I I had a thought that was kind of funny. Maybe you'll think this is funny too, but I imagine Wyn as a Disney princess feeding the robin. He's befriending the robin and and the squirrels, and so when all of the squirrels and animals are flocking over to Wyn in his vibrant experience of life, and maybe maybe that's like the Disney princess experience of life. You know, it's like kind of this. It doesn't have to be a fantasy, I think. And the great thing about it is that you can work like that, you can live like that, you can approach business and relationships and all of these things that we usually take so seriously. You can approach them like that. And that's cool. That's a gift.
I mean, that's a life, right?
Yeah.
To live like that, I mean, that's the jackpot prize.
Yeah. It reminds me of a Michael Neal quote. This one's been just coming to mind more and more lately, where he says, "Wouldn't it be a shame to have a really great life and not realize it?"
Yeah. Apparently, the first person he ever said that to was me.
Really.
Yeah. Well, I think the word was not great, it was cool.
Hmm.
And now, he remembers saying that to me back in December 2010, because I didn't think my life was cool. Now, there were parts of it that I thought were really cool, right? And I was regaling him with these stories where corporate clients would send me all over the world, and then they would, you know, uh, they'd get me a one-on-one tour guide to take me to the Great Wall of China when I was in Beijing, or the client would sort out a car and an overnight stay in Agra because I was in Delhi, and they'd say, "Okay, you got a free day. Why don't you go and see the Taj Mahal tomorrow? It's all on us." I'm going, "Are you kidding me?" Right, all that kind of stuff. Really cool. But inside, I was often really miserable, and it would the vibrancy that I would sense sometimes in those moments when I would be seeing the Taj Mahal, seeing the Statue of David, being at the Great Wall of China and all the other lovely things that I've seen. But they were so fleeting because then I'd have me on my mind again, as opposed to, wait, look, what's going on here when I'm not stuck in whatever I make up about life. Life is extraordinary when I'm not so um, distracted by erroneous thoughts. This is gorgeous, gorgeous. I mean, I know each of us will have examples when we know when our thinking drops away, that we're tapping into something that's deeper, that isn't ours, but comes through and it takes us to another dimension in how we feel and how we perform. And the person who's nodding knows I'm talking about him.
Hello. Hey guys. Sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Cool, cool. First of all, virtual high five times two. Love this conversation and it's really, really beautiful. And a couple of things have been coming up that I love that. Um, Two things, well, I could go on, but one, how practical this is and about the kind of focus that we're speaking with. Now, I've been around this conversation for a little while, and what I've always questioned is it's like, okay, yeah, but when I do professional music work, I have to play drums and I can't fake that. So how is this going to help? Well, a real cool example from a few days ago. I was playing at Glastonbury Festival and it was a lot of fun. Now, when we were on stage, the monitor speakers, now if anyone's listening and they're not a musician, we've got monitors on stage that we can hear, so we can hear what the other musicians on stage are doing. And for the first half of that, my monitors were not working, so I couldn't really hear the rest of the guys on stage that well. And at first it was okay, let's really listen in close and really focus and trying to hear what they were going on, but I just knew that okay, that feeling's not helpful. And what I had to do was let go of that and not try to listen. And as soon as I did that, I was so much more relaxed, and it was like I didn't need the monitor speakers because I could just hear with this openness. And it's so practical to do that rather than try with my little pea brain to force me to know all the details and really be a good listener. I've got a gold medal for trying to listen. But the really cool thing that you said when about is that when we allow ourselves to be in this space, it's like we tap into something else. Like I routinely find that when I show up from there, like not being preoccupied and just letting it flow through, that when I play music, it feels like it's really not me doing it. Now that might find a bit woo-woo and out there to say, but it just feels like it's flowing through me, and it's nothing that's it's it, the thing that comes through. It's like when speaking with a person, it's like the perfect thing to say. It's like I say the perfect musical language in the moment without pre-planning it. Now, when I look at what happened, what I'm drawing on may be something that's in my stored library and vocabulary, but the way that what I'm going to call wisdom shows up when we get out of our own way, for me that's nothing short of miraculous. And also the feeling that accompanies that. Wow. It's like the jackpot feeling that we all really, really want. And the last thing that I'll say, because I could talk endlessly about this, blah, 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 but it is actually really practical and possible to live from that space more often. And the more I've been around this conversation, the more I see that that's really like the point of it, to live in this beautiful space of listening, of well-being, of wisdom. And when we do that, that's where the magic really happens. It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Windsor. And yeah, I was thrilled to know that you were playing on Friday, and then the messages that we swapped on Saturday. It reminded me, I remember years ago hearing a story about John Bonham, the Led Zeppelin drummer, and something about that something would take him over, and it wasn't substances that he and the other guys were using a lot of in the 70s, right? This was him being sober and playing, and it, I can't remember exactly, well, because I don't have the quote in my mind, right? But he said it wasn't him. And I remember hearing something that Mick Fleetwood would say as well, is that, no, he just goes into a trance. And I remember watching him so many times from Fleetwood Mac that he would just be somewhere else. And you could just watch him. He'd be there, kind of his head was totally still and his arms are going like the guy from the Muppet Show. But he was completely still and going, and all this kind of stuff going on. But it's amazing what happens. I mean, sports people call it the zone. I know quite a few musicians these days I've heard, and actors have been talking about the zone, and some people have been saying it in business now as well. And it's the feeling of that. Very cool, Windsor. Good to see you.
You too.
And we will have a little bit of extra time too. Wyn said that he's available to stick around. If you do have to go, totally fine. We'll have time for questions. We'll have time for comments. And we'll just kind of play until we are done. Probably not for, too much longer. But if you do have to go, it will be a recording that you can watch as well. So, yeah. Any other thoughts or comments that are bubbling up for people? Like to open it up to that. You're welcome to respond, Windsor, or Kat, you're also welcome to chime in.
A couple of things have come up for me. One was a memory of over 30 years ago of doing a job where I had a big pile of ironing and a lovely window with beautiful view. And I was just entering that zone. And suddenly I found myself saying this weird phrase. And I didn't understand why I just, in an empty room, just come out with this phrase. And it was a couple of hours later, I realized why I'd said that phrase. It was the answer to a crossword clue I'd been looking at 5 days before. But the moment I got into that, it just came out. I wasn't thinking about it. It's just my mind suddenly decided to give me the answer to the crossword clue. So I started to take time. Now I understand the principles a bit more. I'm starting to trust in that. And the other thing was when you were talking about light, Wyn, because I experience this quite often with light and colour. And when I was little and we just got a telly and there were lots of black and white films on the television, there were very few channels and they used to run old black and white films. And I'd asked why the films were black and white. I was only little. And I was told that they didn't have colour then. And my small child brain thought that meant that the colour in the world was a new thing. And even now, I found myself last night looking at the dusk sky and the colours changing and just finding myself in that space and loving it. And I so appreciate colour. And the same happened a few weeks ago with leaves. You'd think I'd never seen a leaf before. And the abundance of leaves and these natural solar panels everywhere. The ecstasy of suddenly, and I've seen leaves before, of suddenly really seeing leaves. It's wonderful. And I apologise for my geeky geology things. That was my ego brain kicking in with what it thinks are useful bits.
Lovely, Kat.
But
Lovely.
thank you all for this call because it's been lovely.
Well, that helped me, what you said about the geeky stuff about geology. It helped me get out of a mistake that I made because I don't know if I could have lived with myself with such a basic error from
But
somebody
it
who.
wasn't because coal is a sediment.
But there is, I don't know, we're not going to get into metamorphosis versus sedimentary rocks right now, are we? And the other one, igneous. God, look at that. What that for a memory?
Hey!
That'll be in a crossword 5 days ago as well, somewhere. But it's lovely, isn't it, to see leaves for the very first time again. And maybe tomorrow again, and maybe 3 times on Thursday again and again and again.
Oh, I am ecstatic at leaves at the moment, and it's been going on for weeks.
That kind of reminds me of this study that they did on experienced meditators. And it was really interesting because what they would do is they would play a sound for the meditators, like probably a drum or something like that. Every once in a while, the drum would hit. And everyone else would tune the drum out after a little while. Their brains would focus on something else. They might focus on their thoughts. They might focus on this or that, or it would just say, okay, sound is there. I don't need to pay attention to it. But there was something that was really interesting that happened with the experienced meditators, is that they would continue to hear the drum. It would register in their brain waves for longer. And I think that's really cool because it shows that sound, we can hear it for the first time every time. And that's amazing. You can see something with fresh eyes. You can go to life with fresh eyes and see another person, somebody that you care about for the first time. I can see my daughter for the first time. She's 1.5 years right now, I was telling Wyn. And oh my gosh, that's a part of me being a really great dad, is to be really present in her life and see her. Because so much is changing so quickly. Her brain is changing and she's learning so much. and she's so connected with life. So she's my teacher, but I get to be hers too. And I want to teach her how to keep tuned in with life like this, how to have a relaxed focus and bring that to whatever she wants to do. That's a gift. That's something that is irreplaceable. Yeah, she does. I just have to not teach it out of her as best I can with my own conditioning, with my own way of living in my blind spots in life. Yeah.
Already
Yeah.
sounds like a done deal, Rich, given what you've just said. That you're on to yourself with that, and that's, I think, the best we can do is just be on to ourselves, and then a deeper mind takes over. Not the intellect, not the planning of me doing better tomorrow, but the presence of me being more present tomorrow, which isn't me. It's the deepest part of ourselves that is before before personality, before separate self. I was at a talk that Mark Howard gave a few weeks ago in London. And in the afternoon, the conversation meandered into being ordinary. And I remember when I first heard that, I think from George Pransky, pretty sure it was him. I thought that was just like, what the heck would I want to be ordinary for? And once I got over myself and I listened, I went, well, what happened when I let ordinary happen is that my mind really relaxed into a really great connected feeling. And it happened again in that talk when Mark Howard was in London. And I really dropped out of separate self. I dropped out of the desire to be special or to be different or, to buy into any intellectual or egoic thinking, and dropped out of that. And in that place came just this amazing feeling again of that vibrancy that Kat mentioned and Rich and you talked about and Windsor mentioned as well. And it's here's what struck me in that moment a few weeks ago. That deeper feeling is far better than any special feeling. Deeper, longer lasting, real, nicer than any kind of, I don't know, synthesized kind of thing that my separate self could dream up of what would make me special and therefore better and therefore feel a certain way. It had nothing in comparison with being at one with everything that we all come from. That's what struck me for the first time and the second time and the 100th time and deeper each time. Kat, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, it was an insight I had that I wanted to share, and it was about the mundane nature of these miracles. And it was in the noticing that some days I can really, really get caught up in my head to the point that I forget to go and pee. And the pressure's building up in my bladder, but I'm busy trying to work out what I'm going to do about all this thinking and how I can control it and blah, 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 blah. Until it gets to the point where the pressure is really loud. And by the time I get to the bathroom, I'm doing a little dance, trying to ease the pressure. I'm panicking about getting my clothes adjusted so that I don't wet myself. And there's that moment then when I pee and the pressure's gone. And I've put down all that thinking in the appreciation of that pressure being gone. And I get to experience that multiple times a day. How fabulous is the ordinary?
Fabulous is the ordinary. Yes, it really is.
How fabulous
Lovely.
is it that my body knows how to stop me thinking and get me to the bathroom?
Hmm. Right now I'm studying the body. I'm in a massage therapy program. And oh my gosh, the intricacies of even just one system of the body, even just the urinary system that you were talking about, how your body knows how to take in water. I think it was in our last conversation when you were talking about your herbal tea and how your body knows how to take that herbal tea and get nutrients from it and get rid of the waste products of it. It's so intricate, a miracle, really, if we are honest with ourselves. And the more that I learn about it, the more that I acknowledge just how much it does for us automatically without asking, without any needing of thanks. And we can be in an appreciation of that, or we can be in a judgment of that. A lot of us judge our bodies and the experiences that we have with them. And it's easy to do because we have systems that make us feel pain and hormonal fluctuations and that is a wisdom, yes. And it can be uncomfortable, yes, just like the discomfort of having to go. It's really interesting because like you were talking about when I love that ordinary versus extraordinary conversation because I wanted to become extraordinary before I found the three principles. I wanted life to be extraordinary. That was my rich life before. And it was such a judgment on what I had right then, on my in the moment experience. And I was reminded of this recently. I was coached by this free coach, and he was a men's coach. And nothing wrong with his coaching. It was a little bit more traditional. It was more like, what do you want to do in 10 years? And he asked me that question, and I didn't even want to answer it. I stopped and said, I asked him, do you feel the judgment that's in that question? And he didn't see it, and that's okay. But I saw it, and I knew that question, if I could make up a whole bunch of things, I could say, well, my business is doing this, and I'm doing this, but it wouldn't be half as cool. Like you were talking about when you could go to the Taj Mahal or the Great Wall of China, and it wouldn't be half as cool as you feeding a squirrel in your backyard at the park. That's what I wanted to be more in tune with. If I wanted to be anywhere in 10 years, maybe a little bit more in tune with that. But if I'm not, if I'm where I am right now, that's cool too.
Beautiful. Rich, there's a question that's popped into my mind, whether this conversation has come up before um, previous calls about, I mean, because I love soothing of the unsettled mind, the realizing that I can't do the soothing. There is no practice for me to do the soothing. I don't know if that's come up before, Rich.
Not with probably a little bit in with some of the guests. It's really funny because when I tell people, they're like, "Oh, that sounds like, going and having really great sex or something like that." It's like, what do you have to do? Bubble baths. And in fact, like the Releasing Mental Tension podcast, I talk about how it's not bubble baths. It's not going and trying to relax yourself. I mean, I'm a massage therapist. It's not the massage. It's your level of thinking. But I'm curious, where were you wanting to go with that, Wyn?
Well, a lot of us, and I still do this, and I probably always will. I will look for things that will make me feel better. So I will say, okay, I need 2 cups of coffee today because the first one, as delicious as it was, I need more caffeine. It's not going to be tea next. Or ice cream or pizza or whatever it is that is my kind of that comes into my mind, or a glass of bourbon to help me relax at night. Not that I'm saying there's anything inherently wrong in any of that stuff, but to know that that's not the source of soothing, that anything that I do or intake isn't the source of soothing. That is just a really lovely thing to realize that, and and I remember for years when I was first introduced to the 3 principles that this took me the longest time, right? To notice that the nature of the human mind is to be relaxed in its default setting. And if it's true that that's the default to be relaxed, then anything I do can only take it away from being at its natural default relaxed state. So attaching meaning to thinking more about things, being distracted, thinking that when I get this, then I'll feel that, and when I achieve this, then everything's going to be okay, and so will I, all that kind of stuff. And all of that is the story that that I can have, and any of us can have as a human being, that we buy into what we think because we don't think we're imagining. We think what we think is true. It's one of our defining characteristics as a species, apparently. And to me, it's just a really lovely way of knowing that I don't have to do anything for my mind to relax. It is not attaching to a distraction. And every distraction's thought, as opposed to it is the sound from outside, or the what I can see, or tomorrow, or yesterday. None of those are the source of me coming out from a relaxed mind. It's what I think about them and the degree to which I do anything with spurious thought, which I have got no say over. But if I then think about it, I'm then potentially less relaxed, especially if it's a thought. And then when I think about it, I then innocently create the sense of worry. Well, that's me innocently thinking myself out of a relaxed mind. And that's the only thing I think we can do, that we think ourselves out of relaxed. So that's where I was heading with it.
Mhm.
I know, Trina, you said something in chat here. Let me scroll down to that. Noticing it's already there when I put down the thinking. Yeah, the
She's on
relaxed
it.
mind is already there when I put down my thinking. Yeah, always.
Mm.
I remember somebody saying years ago on one of the training courses I was on, everything we're ever up against is only ever one thought thick. One thought thick. And
Mm.
then back, peace, connected, soothed. It's a lovely thing to notice. And what I find is the I don't know if it's a paradox or not, is that going back to something that you said, Rich, in the story about your wife and listening and trying to listen, the harder I try for my mind to be soothed and relaxed, the further away it is. Because that adds more noise, more thinking into the system, and more thought cannot bring less thought. More thought can't do it. So it's, as you said, just noticing it and letting go.
Yeah. And knowing it's not my thinking mind that's in control. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, nice to see you. Thanks for putting your camera on.
Hi.
I mean, the notion of control is a whole other thing that I can talk about and rabbit on for a while. Because I know that I used to want to be in control, and then I realized that everything I ever tried to be in control of took me away from the feeling I would have if I actually thought I was. So I wanted to be in control, therefore that I would feel more relaxed. And I realized, well, that, first of all, is impossible. And second, every time I tried, it would take me further away from the feeling I thought I would get when I felt in control. But I could do that by relinquishing and surrendering, because I know I don't control a darn thing. Humbling and true. Yeah.
For me too. She said it took a huge, it took a huge sense of responsibility away. And that's like a burden off your shoulders. It really is thinking we have to do everything with the power of our minds, with our will, with controlling. That's where I was. Before I found the three principles, I was manipulating external circumstances. I was trying to use meditation, qigong, cold showers, tai chi. I would do anything that I thought would help me. And really what's kind of the thing that you're talking about, the thing that's at play, is that where we start at home base. And then we can go off and get lost in our own thoughts. And then we're trying to use different things. Maybe that's alcohol, maybe it's a habit of another kind. Maybe it's watching TV or binging TV. And thank you so much, Kat. Yeah. And then we try and bring ourselves back home. And we can get lost along the way. I don't feel like we ever truly get home with any of the techniques. I think we can get close. I think that there's like a semblance of it, that we can get, like if we get really high or get really drunk. But it's not the true space of home. And what you're saying is that you can just relax back. You can just dismiss thought. Sometimes I'll call that thought recognition. You just recognize when you're thinking. And then you're home.
What I love in that is that when those things work that you pointed at, such as when I'm playing pool in a pub or in a bar, I play better pool after the first drink. Why? I'm less self-conscious. Why? Because thinking is more slippery with a little bit of alcohol. Now, I'm not saying, hey, go for alcohol then, because I know what happens after my third bourbon. I don't even know which end of the stick to hold, right? And I'm a mess. I'm a mess that night because I can't hold it. I can't hold alcohol, and I'll be rubbish the next day as well, right? But wait a minute. what's going on inside us when we can feel closer to home because of something that we're doing, but we're missing the mechanism by which that happens. Thought becomes more slippery with a little bit of alcohol, which is not attaching to any spurious thinking, any spurious thought. Just let him go. Just let him go. And, other things, not that I'm an expert in hallucinogenics or anything like that, but noticing the ability of my level of consciousness to rise when I'm in a very quiet mind, and the vibrancy, and then the noticing of the leaves as if I'd never seen leaves before, going back to the previous point that Kat made, and to be in that zone that Windsor mentioned about drumming, and to be in that. I remember you saying the same thing when you're doing a massage, that there's a place of no thought. When I'm listening to people, there's a place of no thought, or very little. There's certainly just skating across the surface, right? Well, that feels just amazing. And that is a higher level of consciousness, without any of the downsides, without the addiction and without the come down, without all the other stuff that comes with it. It's a natural appreciation for the fact that we're conscious. Sapient. I mean, I don't know. That to me is everything I thought life could be that I didn't think was possible.
Sometimes a word that's been coming up to me lately, it's like, I think that's the psychedelic experience of life. Without any drugs, without getting high, you can find a psychedelic experience of life. And it's kind of felt like that for me recently. There's been moments where it's been like, oh, and you just start to be untethered and you just in the experience, and the vibrancy comes alive. There's a story that I remember of Ram Dass, and he went to India and studied with, oh, I forgot his name. His like guru. But I remember this experience that he told about because he was very into psychedelics and he thought that that was the gateway to a higher level of consciousness. And his guru said, well, let me try them. And he took them and he said that nothing changed. He was already in this psychedelic experience of oneness, of love, of connection. So that taking outside drugs didn't change his experience. No, that's not to say that we should be like every single moment of our lives. We're not going to be. We're going to be grounded in thought sometimes. But I think that there's something to that psychedelic experience of life where you're in it. And Wyn, I'd love you to have any final thoughts. I also would love to plug the event that's coming up because I'm going to be there and I'm very excited about it.
We're going to meet in person.
I know. I'm a little bit like giddy. We'll say giddy. But yeah, you get the final words, the final thoughts on our conversation today. And then, please share the event.
I'll start with the event, but can I plug a couple more?
Please, plug
There's
away.
a few things, because we're going to be meeting, you and I, and a bunch of other people in Denver, Colorado, your state, on August the 1st and 3rd, and it's called the Listening World Summit, and it's going to be called, or is called, Listening to Ignite the Human Spirit. So over 3 days, a bunch of us are going to be speaking. And the format is such that each person's going to speak for around 20 minutes. and then there'll be a question that each person will be asked to just reflect back on and notice what they notice. And then in the small round tables that we'll have, I don't know how many we'll have, but the tables of anywhere between 6, 8, 10 people at each table, and then sharing our tables, what's coming up as we reflect. And then a wider total room kind of share of anything and questions back to the speaker. And I think we've got 9 or 10 of those happening over 3 days. So it's not a whole kind of like intense amount. It's the beauty of this. And I went to the second one that was ever run in Prague. And I spoke at the first one last year in Prague and attended the one in Prague back in early May. And I was astounded by the insights I had by playing along, by actually taking the question and reflecting, I don't know, 9, 10 times as those conversations are going on. So listening to Ignite the Human Spirit is going to be a very, I think, very rich 3 days in Denver, August 1st, 2nd, 3rd. And then in September, back closer to home for me, in London, I'm going to be running a weekend event on the 20th and 21st of September called Unconditional Peace of Mind. And me and my partner in crime, my peace of mind collaborator, Jessie Douglas Smith McGraw, she's coming over from Los Angeles to see friends and really to do another retreat with me. It's the 3rd time we've collaborated on a weekend retreat, and the first 2 have been a blast. So we're already half full on that, a few months out. So message me if you want to know that. And then in a few weeks later after that, on October the 2nd to the 5th in Lacona, Washington, with George and Linda Pransky. George and Linda have been running their professional training retreat for 3 principles, coaches, practitioners, teachers, and therapists in Lacona since, I think, about 2014, 2015. And I first went in February of 2016, and I've not missed one since. It was always the first thing that gets put in my calendar as soon as the dates are out. Now, a few times they've been virtual because of COVID, and once I got COVID, so I couldn't go in person and broke my foot at the same day. So there were 2 reasons I couldn't go to that. And that happened 2 days before I was due to fly out. But this year I've got the honor of being at the front of the room. I'll be co-hosting with George and Linda. I've not done that on ProTrain with them before. So I know it's going to be a beautiful event, and that's in person and virtual if you want to, if you can't make it across to Lacona, Washington, which is halfway between Seattle and Vancouver. 4 days of really a lovely deep dive into deepening, grounding, and helping that then play out in the work that we do with the clients in any walk of life. So those are things that I've got coming up in August, September, and October. So thanks for allowing me the space and the time to give them a plug. And as for final words, look, somebody asked me at the beginning, my very first client call of 2024, someone I'd not met before, but they were the boss of a long-standing client. They were the CEO of a company, and was intrigued by the work I'd done with this person and a few other colleagues in the business, and just wanted a chat. So January the 2nd, I think it was that year. And he asked me, so what are you up to in life? Because you seem to be, doing some really good work. What are you up to in life? And I said, oh, enjoying it. What do you mean? Well, I just want to enjoy my life. And I could hear the kind of the cogs turning in his mind, and it was just like, wow, that's really nice. And then he said, but what do you do in your professional life? And I said, well, I help others enjoy theirs. And he went, wow, that is simple. And then he said, so wait, how does that, I think I know the answer, he said, but how does that help people in business, at work, and in other things, and in other, pursuits that we have in this world of form that we have in our human bodies? And I said, well, anytime someone's enjoying life, they do everything better. And he went, again, that is that simple. So my wish for everyone is to to find a way for their minds to remain soothed and back to being settled and relaxed in a way that life becomes more and more enjoyable. And that's done without even trying, or without a self-centered ego having anything to do with it. Because life, I can't imagine how much enjoyment I have in it today. So thanks for letting me speak, Rich, and really lovely to meet you. I'm honored to know you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person. Big in-person hug very soon.
Thank you so much, Wyn, for your time and wisdom.
You're welcome. Take care.